Welcome to my channel, The Good Book Tales. In today's video, we begin a journey that few ever stop to question, a journey hidden in plain sight within the pages of the Bible. What if I told you that one of the oldest nations on earth is mentioned again and again in Scripture, not as a footnote, but as a powerful presence tied to kings, prophets, and divine moments? A land known as Cush. A land many scholars today connect to ancient Ethiopia. And the deeper you look, the more unsettling the silence around it becomes. From the very first chapters of the Bible, the name Cush appears alongside the great rivers of Eden, standing at the edge of humanity's beginnings. It is not introduced as a distant or unknown place, but as a land already established, already important. Cush in the Bible is linked to strength, wealth, and mystery. Yet somehow, its story has been pushed to the margins. Why is that? Why do sermons rarely linger there, and why do most Bible readers pass over the name without stopping to ask what it really means? Ethiopia, often identified with biblical Cush, was not a passive observer in the ancient world. It was a kingdom with influence, culture, and power. The Bible speaks of Cushite warriors, royal officials, and even a Cushite woman connected to Moses himself. These are not background characters. These are people who walked into the center of biblical history. And still, their full story feels unfinished, almost deliberately left in shadow. As we move through Scripture, Ethiopia appears at moments of tension and turning points. In the Psalms, Cush is named among the nations that will one day reach out to God. In the prophets, it is described with awe, sometimes with warning, sometimes with promise. In the New Testament, an Ethiopian eunuch travels hundreds of miles searching for truth, only to encounter the message that would change his life forever. Why was this moment chosen? And why an Ethiopian? There is something deeper unfolding here. A thread that connects Africa, faith, and destiny long before modern borders or histories were drawn. This story challenges what many of us were taught, and it raises uncomfortable questions about whose stories get told, and whose are quietly skipped over. The Bible does not treat Cush as insignificant. So why do we? Tonight, we are not here to rewrite Scripture or force hidden meanings. We are here to listen carefully, to read slowly, and to follow the names, places, and people exactly where the Bible leads us. Because once you begin to trace Ethiopia's presence in the Bible, you start to realize this is not just history. It's a doorway. And the most unsettling part is this: the deeper we go, the clearer it becomes that Cush's role may point towards something still unfinished, something that hasn't fully played out yet. So the real question is not whether Ethiopia is in the Bible. The question is why its story feels like it's waiting for the next chapter. As we slow down and look closer, the name Cush begins to feel less like a distant place and more like a living presence woven into the biblical world. In Genesis, Cush is introduced not just as land, but as a lineage, a people tied to the earliest generations after the flood. This alone changes the way we read the story. Ethiopia in the Bible is not something added later, it is there from the beginning, standing near the roots of humanity itself. That realization quietly shifts the ground beneath everything we thought we knew. Ancient maps, long before modern borders, placed Cush south of Egypt, along the Nile, stretching deep into Africa. This region was known for gold, trade routes, and military strength. When the Bible mentions Cush, it often does so with respect, sometimes even fear. These were not weak or forgotten people. They were known. They were seen. And they were influential enough to be named alongside world powers like Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon. That raises an important question. Why would a distant land be mentioned so often unless its role truly mattered? Then there are the individuals. The Bible does not just speak of Cush as a place, it introduces Cushite people by name and position. A Cushite messenger runs through danger to deliver news to King David. A Cushite woman becomes part of Moses' personal life, causing tension and jealousy within his own family. These moments are brief, but they are loaded with meaning. The text never explains them fully, almost as if it expects the reader to already understand their significance. The prophets add another layer to the mystery. Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Zephaniah speak of Cush with language that feels both distant and intimate. Ethiopia is described as a land of tall and strong people, a nation beyond the rivers, a place God has not forgotten. Sometimes Cush stands under judgment. Other times, it stands at the edge of hope. The tone shifts, but the presence remains. It's as if Ethiopia's story is moving quietly alongside Israel's, intersecting when the moment is right. And still, the Bible refuses to spell everything out. It leaves gaps. It leaves tension. It leaves us wondering whether Cush is simply a historical reference or part of something larger unfolding across generations. Because if Ethiopia appears at the beginning, walks through the middle, and shows up again at critical moments, then maybe it's not just background scenery. Maybe it's part of a pattern we haven't fully noticed yet. The deeper we follow this pattern, the more uncomfortable the questions become. If Cush, often linked to ancient Ethiopia, held such a visible place in the Bible, then why does its role feel so incomplete? One angle suggests distance, that Cush was simply a neighboring nation watching Israel's story from afar. But the text itself keeps pulling Cush closer, placing it inside moments of conflict, faith, and decision. This tension between presence and silence is where the mystery grows. From Israel's perspective, Cush is both familiar and foreign. At times, it appears as a powerful ally or a looming force on the horizon. At other times, it is portrayed as a land God speaks to directly, bypassing Israel altogether. That alone challenges a narrow reading of biblical history. It suggests that God's attention was never limited to one people or one place. Ethiopia in the Bible becomes a reminder that the biblical world was far larger and more connected than we often imagine. Another layer comes from the way Cush is described. The language is vivid but brief, almost guarded. Strength, distance, movement, rivers, messengers. These repeated images feel intentional. They hint at a people constantly in motion, crossing boundaries, carrying news, carrying influence. Yet the Bible never pauses to tell us their full story. It leaves us standing at the edge, aware that something important is happening just out of view. Then there is the spiritual tension. When the prophets speak of Cush lifting hands to God, it feels like a promise without a timeline. Is it a future hope, or a reflection of something already taking place? And why does this promise echo across centuries, resurfacing in the New Testament with an Ethiopian seeker reading scripture alone on a desert road? That moment feels connected to everything that came before, yet it also opens a new set of questions. Different voices, different eras, one recurring name. Cush. Ethiopia. Each appearance adds weight, but never closure. And as these threads begin to cross, the real conflict sharpens. Are we missing a larger story because we stopped looking too soon? Or was the silence always part of the design, waiting for the right moment to be understood? As all these threads tighten, the story begins to feel less like scattered references and more like a slow drumbeat moving towards something unavoidable. Every time Ethiopia, or Cush, appears in the Bible, it arrives at a moment charged with meaning. A decision is being made. A message is being delivered. A boundary is being crossed. These are not random mentions. They feel placed, almost timed, as if each one is setting the stage for something still ahead. The tension grows when we realize how often Cush appears at the edges of turning points. When nations rise and fall, Cush is named. When judgment is spoken, Cush listens. When hope is promised, Cush is included. Yet the spotlight never fully settles there. It shifts away just before answers come. This pattern leaves us leaning forward, sensing that we are circling a truth that refuses to fully reveal itself. The Ethiopian eunuch becomes impossible to ignore at this stage. His story stands like a bridge between everything that came before and everything that follows. He is powerful, educated, searching, yet unsatisfied. He is reading Isaiah, one of the very prophets who spoke of Cush, and still he does not understand. That moment feels symbolic. Ethiopia in the Bible is present, prepared, and still asking questions. And the road he travels is not crowded. It is quiet, intentional, almost waiting. From another angle, this raises the stakes even higher. What if Cush was always meant to be a witness rather than the center? What if its role was to appear, disappear, and reappear, carrying something forward without drawing attention to itself? That idea feels unsettling because it suggests the story is larger than any single nation or timeline. As we reach this point, the mystery tightens its grip. Too many connections line up. Too many moments echo each other across centuries. Cush is no longer a background name. It feels like a signal. And just as the pieces seem ready to fall into place, the story pauses, right at the edge of understanding, leaving one final question hanging. In the air, what happens when the silence finally breaks? Just when it feels like the story has revealed all it can, another layer begins to surface, and it changes how everything before it is understood. The silence surrounding Cush no longer feels accidental. Instead, it feels protective, as if the Bible is guarding something easily overlooked by those who read too quickly. Ethiopia in the Bible starts to look less like a supporting presence and more like a thread intentionally woven through moments of transition, moments when faith moves from one place to another. This shift becomes clearer when we notice how Cush is often linked to movement rather than settlement. Messengers run. Envoys travel. Seekers journey long distances. Rivers flow outward from the land associated with Cush, not inward. This imagery suggests direction, not isolation. It hints that Ethiopia's role may have been to carry ideas, belief, and influence beyond visible borders. That possibility reframes every appearance of Cush as part of a quiet but powerful transfer. The tension escalates when we return to the words of the prophets. Their messages to and about Cush are not only warnings or promises, they feel like signals placed in time. When Isaiah speaks of a land beyond the rivers, he describes a people already known to God, already part of the conversation. That alone challenges the idea that faith history moves in a straight line from one center outward. It suggests multiple streams flowing at once. Now the conflict sharpens. If Cush was already connected, already listening, then why does the Bible leave its story unfinished? Why are we given glimpses without conclusions? One possibility is that the climax was never meant to be confined to ancient pages. Perhaps the tension was designed to stretch forward, pulling future readers into the story itself. This is where the mystery becomes personal. The Bible does not close the door on Ethiopia's role, it leaves it open. The Ethiopian eunuch returns home with understanding, but the text does not follow him. We are left standing at the crossroads, aware that something continued beyond the frame. And that unresolved continuation raises the stakes even higher. Because if Cush was not just part of the past, but part of an ongoing pattern, then the real climax may not be behind us at all. It may still be forming, waiting for the moment when the overlooked pieces finally demand to be seen. The tension finally breaks when we stop looking for a missing chapter and realize the Bible has been pointing to the climax all along. The story of Cush, often linked to ancient Ethiopia, was never meant to stand alone. Its power comes from how it connects. From Genesis to the prophets, from royal courts to desert roads, Ethiopia in the Bible consistently appears at moments when faith is moving beyond familiar boundaries. The conflict was never about whether Cush mattered. It was about whether we were paying attention. When the Ethiopian eunuch meets Philip, the pieces quietly fall into place. A seeker from Cush is reading Isaiah, a prophet who spoke directly about his land. He is not. He is prepared. The message reaches him at the exact moment it needs to. This is not coincidence, it is resolution. The silence surrounding Cush suddenly makes sense. The Bible did not ignore Ethiopia's role. It trusted the reader to connect it. Cush was never meant to dominate the story, but to carry it forward. Here, the main conflict resolves. Ethiopia is not forgotten, not marginal, and not accidental in Scripture. It stands as proof that the biblical story has always been global, crossing rivers, cultures, and continents. Cush represents those who were already listening, already seeking, even when history focused elsewhere. The tension between presence and silence transforms into purpose. But just as the resolution settles in, the final twist emerges. The Bible never tells us what happens next. The Ethiopian returns home, and the text goes quiet again. No names. No follow-up. No closure. And suddenly we understand the deeper meaning of the silence. The story does not end because it moves off the page. That unresolved ending is not a flaw. It is an invitation. Ethiopia in the Bible is not just a completed chapter, it is a living echo. The faith that crossed deserts and rivers did not stop with one encounter. It continued, quietly shaping history beyond the spotlight. And the final surprise is this: the story of Cush was never waiting for an ending. It was waiting for witnesses. The climax does not close the mystery. It hands it forward. And as the Bible steps back, the question it leaves behind is simple and unsettling. If the story continued beyond the page then, where might it still be unfolding now? As the story settles, the silence around Cush no longer feels heavy or confusing. It feels intentional. The Bible did not trace every step of Ethiopia's journey because it did not need to. What mattered was the connection, the moment when faith crossed borders and took root in places often overlooked. Ethiopia in the Bible stands as a reminder that God's work was never limited by geography, language, or culture. Cush appears, not to demand attention, but to confirm that the message was already reaching far beyond what most people expected. The unanswered questions now take on a different tone. Instead of asking why the Bible didn't say more, we begin to see what it already said clearly. Cush was present at the beginning, acknowledged in prophecy, and confirmed in action through the Ethiopian eunuch. That arc completes itself quietly but firmly. The subplot of silence resolves into purpose. The mystery resolves into meaning. What once felt hidden now feels complete. This story also reshapes how we read Scripture as a whole. It reminds us to slow down, to notice names and places we might normally skip over. Ancient Ethiopia was not a footnote in biblical history. It was a witness, a participant, and a carrier of faith. The rivers, the messengers, the journeys, and the seekers all point to a faith that moved outward, not inward, and continued long after the text stepped away. The final takeaway is simple but powerful. The Bible's story is bigger than one land or one people. Cush, often linked to Ethiopia, stands as proof that the biblical narrative has always been global in its vision and inclusive in its reach. Its presence challenges us to rethink what we thought we knew and invites us to read with fresh eyes. As we close this chapter, the story ends where it began, not with certainty, but with awareness. The name Cush is no longer just a word on the page. It carries history, faith, and quiet significance. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The Bible moves on, but the message remains, echoing across time, reminding us that some of the most important stories are told in whispers, not shouts.